is the Social Security pushing back the age of that.
With the Nikki Haley campaign in Salem, New Hampshire, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Former President Trump rallying in Laconia, New Hampshire on Monday night, commending his former rival Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
He fought hard and he fought well, and now we have one left. We started off with, really, if you add some Democrats into it, we started off with 13, and now we're down to 2 people. And I think one person will be gone probably tomorrow. And the other one will be gone in November.
And don't forget, Fox News Audio will be providing special coverage of the New Hampshire primary beginning at 6:06 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Go to foxnewsradio.com to listen and to find out more. America's listening to Fox News.
Yikes! Are those expensive credit card bills arriving? Well, we can help. Bank Pacific has launched our New Year's Resolution Solution personal loan with annual percentage rates as low as 7.49%. Ready to pay off your credit cards or for whatever you want, starting at 7.49% APR. Apply in person or online at bankpacific.com and come join us. We're still celebrating. Equal credit opportunity lender. Conditions apply. Happy New Year.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
The Supreme Court will allow the Biden administration to resume cutting razor wire barriers along the U.S. southern border. Fox's Kristen Goodwin with more on that.
In a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court grants the Justice Department's emergency appeal to allow Border Patrol to continue removing a razor wire fence on the border of Eagle Pass, Texas, and Mexico. Texas National Guard troops installing the roughly 30 miles of fencing to deter migrant crossings. A federal judge ordering it to be taken down. Then a federal appeals court granted Texas's request for a preliminary injunction. In court documents appealing the decision, the Biden administration argued the wire prevents Border Patrol from reaching migrants as they cross the Rio Grande. Adding federal immigration law trumps Texas's efforts to stop the flow of migrants entering the country. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
The U.S. and the United Kingdom conducting a second round of bombing runs on sites used by Iranian-supported Houthis. Fox's Gernal Scott has more details on this.
The joint airstrikes targeted sites with missile launching capabilities in Yemen Monday. The operation was carried out via the sea with warships and submarines and from jet fighters, aiming their weapons not only at launchers, but at storage sites to deplete the Houthis' arsenal. Less than 2 weeks earlier, the Americans and the British launched the first wave of bombings, taking out more than 60 targets in 28 areas, designed to stop the Houthis' drone assaults on commercial vessels in the months since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Another good day on Wall Street as Wall Street rose again to build on its all-time high reached last week. The S&P 500 added 0.2% Monday. The Dow average climbed 0.4%, and the Nasdaq Composite rose 0.3%. Stocks climbed as Treasury yields mostly eased in the bond market. I'm Ted Lindner, and this is Fox News.
Pipeline replacement on Route 16 between Reventax and Marine Corps Drive, Route 1. The lane closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024 as a 24-hour continuous operation. The project, a 198-megawatt combined cycle power plant. Again, the closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024. For more information, please contact 671-649-0001. Thank you for your patience as we move forward for Guam.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Celebrating New Year's 2024, Whopper Wednesday is back. Every Wednesday in January, visit participating Burger King restaurants and say, I love the Whopper. And get a free flame-grilled Whopper sandwich with the purchase of any large-size Whopper combo meal. Top off your meal with French fries, onion rings, or halvesies, and a refreshing Coca-Cola. Tell your family and friends and enjoy your Whopper Wednesday only in January. Available at BK Hagutnya, Micronesia Mall, and the airport. Happy New Year, Guam, from your friends at Burger King. You
Because it can't be long. He can't negotiate. You look at what's happening. The whole world is blowing it.
The third party is going to get a lot of votes in 2024. I'm just telling you.
Want to make a difference? Want to be heard? Want to change? Well, it's only 290 days until Election Day.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
From coast to coast. From border to border. From sea to shining sea. Sean Hannity is on.
All right, thank you, Scott Shannon, and thanks to all of you for being with us. It's Friday. It's the Sean Hannity Show. Toll free. Our number is 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. This is just breaking as we come on the air here today, and that is that Alec Baldwin has been indicted on charges of involuntary manslaughter. Prosecutors seeking to hold the actor accountable for the on-set death of cinematographer Haley Hutchins, 65. He was initially charged in the case back, if you remember, in January of 23, but those charges were dropped 3 months later, and after Baldwin's defense team raised questions about whether the Colt 45 was functioning properly when it, in fact, was fired. Anyway, Hutchins was preparing to film a scene with Baldwin at a ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the gun went off. We know what happened. He maintained he did not pull the trigger. Well, as a gun owner, I can tell you triggers don't pull themselves. Anyway, if convicted, he does face 18 months in prison. Baldwin's attorney saying we'll look forward to our day in court. They sent the gun apparently for further forensic testing last summer. The experts reconstructed the gun, which had been broken during FBI testing, and concluded it could only have been fired by the pull of the trigger. That might be a little problematic that it was taken apart. Just saying, giving you my objective opinion. We have some Fannie Willis news that's getting pretty interesting in Fulton County, Georgia, because the Fulton County DA, this is, like the New York Attorney General, just love to go after Donald Trump, campaign on it. Anyway, hires this outside counsel who apparently turns into a boyfriend, and she's paying this guy $654,000. They're both going to the White House to meet with God knows who and talk about God knows what related to probably all things Donald Trump. But maybe that's where they did the plotting and planning and framing of these RICO charges, which is, to me, just an obscene charge. But Willis's case against Trump has now turned into a full-blown soap opera. Willis now demanding that a Georgia judge issue a protective order against her boyfriend's jilted wife. I guess get ready for the first episode of All the President's Men, kind of meeting the Real Housewives of Fulton County, Georgia. Anyway, in promise of further chaos in a case that appears to be going off the rails, the New York Sun reports Willis is now accusing the estranged wife of the special prosecutor she hired and with whom she is accused of having an affair, that she's interfering in her prosecution of President Trump. That accusation comes in an emergency motion for a protective order in Superior Court of Cobb County that attempts to quash a subpoena for her testimony in a special prosecutor Nathan Wade's divorce proceedings from his wife of 26 years. Now Willis is accusing this guy's wife of working in concert with one of Mr. Trump's co-defendants. And Willis is arguing that on January 8th, 3 things happened contemporaneously. Mrs. Wade issued her subpoena. Mr. Roman petitioned for divorce proceedings to be unsealed. And Mr. Roman filed for Ms. Willis to be disqualified. Ms. Willis alleges that all this suggests coordination between Mrs. Willis and Mr. Roman to undermine Mrs. Willis as she prepares for one of the most anticipated trials in American history. Mrs. Willis does not deny or admit that she and Mr. Wade conducted this affair. Instead, she reasons that because the parties agree the marriage is irretrievably broken and the concept of fault is not an issue, there's no information that she could provide that might prove relevant to granting or denying the divorce. She calls her role in the split irrelevant. Well, not irrelevant, Ms. Willis is telling, is Mrs. Wade's own behavior, which the prosecutor is alleging included an adulterous relationship, longtime friend. The question here is whether or not Willis benefited financially by giving favored treatment to a lawyer who's really in secret her boyfriend to take elaborate and expensive vacations. Anyway, so she seeks to attempt to, quash the subpoena related to the misconduct. So we'll watch that case, too, as we get started here on this Friday. All right, so we're looking to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is on Tuesday. We will be broadcasting Monday and Tuesday from the Live Free or Die state. And there's been recent polls, post-Iowa polls after Donald Trump's victory in Iowa, decisive lead, historic win. I was watching some people actually say, it's no big deal that Donald Trump won by 30 points. After all, he's the incumbent. I'm like, no, he's not the incumbent. No, this is a real primary.
Stay tuned. Tall Tales will be with you in just a few minutes.
Non-candidates. I didn't think the North Dakota governor was particularly strong. Chris Christie was a joke. He had an agenda to just bash Trump and I guess prepare for his next paid gig as an anchor on either fake news CNN or MSDNC. But whatever. He's allowed to do whatever he wants, but he was never a serious candidate. But certainly Governor DeSantis always has been, and certainly so has Nikki Haley. But anyway, so in these polls, Trump has now increased his lead over Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. 4 days left until the state's first in the nation primary, according to the results of the latest Suffolk University Boston Globe tracking poll. Anyway, those survey results.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie will be on in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
They called Trump at 52% in Iowa, and in fact, he got 51%. So they were very accurate in Iowa. Take that for what it is. Anyway, that's 2 percentage points higher than he had when he polled the first 2 days of the poll. Haley, meanwhile, dropped a percentage point, landing at 35. Governor DeSantis, who I don't really think is going to be competing in New Hampshire, is a distant third at 6 points. My guess is he's probably going straight to South Carolina, where, for a lot of candidates, South Carolina becomes do or die. Now, win, lose, or draw, South Carolina, that primary is going to be very important to Nikki Haley because that is her home state. And recent polls on Real Clear Politics, the average there had Trump up by about 30. Later today, Senator Tim Scott will join the other senator in the state and the governor in the state, McMaster.
This just in, Bob Klitzkie is doing some research on Guam traffic. An impromptu inspection. Full report in a few minutes. Don't go away. Just a reminder, Tall Tales is brought to you every day, Monday to Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. by Jeff's Pirates Cove. Down south, don't forget to stop by Jeff's Pirates Cove. You can see experience is a great dining experience, great atmosphere, beachside, entire experience. Tune in to The Point, 93.3 FM, every Monday on 6 p.m. with Veterans with Benefits, a brand new program for veterans, by veterans, hosted by Anthony Tyrone and Corinna Ballista, every Monday at 6 p.m.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, even on those days when I have a special mission to inspect traffic on Marine Corps Drive, a report of which I will give you at the conclusion of today's show, right before I say goodbye to our president. I know all you tailgaters stay tuned to the very last minute anyhow, but if you didn't, today would be a great time to do that. Okay, so let's launch right into Tall Tales. We start out with Jimmy Ikotny. And here's the title of today's editorial in the Daily News. The Daily News has got a string going here. They're going for Joe DiMaggio's record, consecutive days with hits, or consecutive games with hits.
Let's hope they don't disappear like Joe DiMaggio.
Exactly. Our view, more work needed on compact impact bill. Guam officials need to do more than just testifying before the subcommittee to get continued federal reimbursement for at least a portion of the cost of hosting migrants from island nations with compacts or free association with the United States. They must look into the particular provision in Delegate James Moylan's H.R. 6273 that's unacceptable to the Department of Interior, which has oversight over territories. Citizens from the so-called freely associated states, Palau, the Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia, can live, work, and study in any state or territory without a visa. They have a non-immigrant residency status, the technical name for which is habitual residence. You tailgaters know that. The Interior made it clear they cannot support Moylan's recently heard compact impact bill because it imposes additional requirements for non-immigrant residency on Guam. They shouldn't be using the word residency, even though they are habitual residents, because residents, they technically are not residents of Guam because they aren't eligible for the things that all residents are eligible for. Imposes additional requirements for non-immigrant residency on Guam, particularly the proposal require proof of employment or admission to an educational institution prior to FAS migrants relocating to Guam. Deputy Assistant Secretary Keone Nakoa, in his testimony before a congressional subcommittee, laid out the issues with Moylan's bill, particularly the added requirements for FAS citizens, because it would place a risk of the United States' close relationship with the freely associated states, a cornerstone of U.S. national interests in the Pacific. The intended effect of the proposed legislation on the compacts and the Immigration Nationality Acts is somewhat unclear, given that under the compacts, the eligible FAS students do not require visas to travel to the United States, including Guam. Now, I'm going to have to stop here and unpack this a little bit. I have harped about this repeatedly, that the close relationship with the freely associated states is a cornerstone of U.S. national interests in the Pacific. And I have pointed out many, many times that the United States foreign policy depends on having a good relations with the three island nations to our south. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the country. It's a good thing for the territory of Guam. But it is national foreign policy. Territories don't make policy, but we wind up with a bill. So what happened was the national government took the three island nations out for a deluxe dinner at Jeff's Pirates Cove. Everybody ate and drank and had a wonderful time. And when the check came, they said, "Here, Guam, you take care of the check." That should be a cornerstone of our lobbying before the Congress. Now, we don't use this term, compacts of free association, but what those compacts really are, they are treaties. They are treaties between two sovereign countries, the United States and the what we call the freely associated states, the COFA states, etc. Now, I've got to go to the U.S. Constitution to talk a little bit about treaties that the United States has entered into. And I direct your attention to Article 6 of the United States Constitution. And it says at paragraph 2, the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. Now, you can tell that those guys back at Philadelphia in 1787 really knew what the hell they were doing, because they used the magic words, notwithstanding. Yeah, so you knew what they were doing. But anyhow, those compacts are treaties. They are the supreme law of the land. So any attempts on our part, and once again, you know, a really sharp piece of pencil and a good piece of paper can have an impact. on these things, but you got to be really, really careful. But what James Moylan is asking for is contrary to the Constitution. It's contrary to those 3 treaties. It is counter to the United States foreign policy. And then because it's a one-off, it's going to cause the Immigration and Naturalization Service all kinds of problems because they won't know how to deal with it. They've got an act that says this is how you come to the United States. If you want to come to the United States, you go to the consular section of a United States embassy or to a United States consul. And, of course, you fill out reams and reams of paper. And you can come either as an immigrant or a non-immigrant, provided that you're eligible. Now, there are 6 categories of eligibility, each of which is limited by a quota. So the fact that you fill out a piece of paper and you perfect your eligibility doesn't mean you leave the consul and go down to the airport and climb on a plane. Then there are non-immigrant statuses, intercompany transferees, the H-2 visas, etc. And one of the things that you must convince a consular official of when you apply for non-immigrant status, like an H visa, is that you do not have immigrant intent, that you do not plan on coming to the United States and staying, that when your stay is over, you'll pack up and head home. So when you've got something like a habitual resident that is a non-immigrant but can stay here until he dies, that doesn't fit very well with their scheme of things. So, you know, you've got your visa and your passport, whether it's an immigrant or non-immigrant visa. When you arrive in Guam, an immigration inspector inspects your visa. Now, this has probably changed, but as I remember it, he inspects your visa and your passport. And if you are admissible as an immigrant or a non-immigrant, he issues you a paper called an I-94. And that tells you how long you can stay. The visa does not tell you how long you can stay. It just says you can come in. Once you're in, how long you stay is up to the Immigration and Naturalization Service. The so-called green card is actually, the formal name for it used to be receipt for alien registration. So if you come in as either an immigrant or a non-immigrant, you've got to go to INS and you've got to register. You got to tell them where you live, you know, all your contact information. And if you change it, you got to go back and tell them. And if there's a good reason and the law allows, they can extend your stay. Let's say you come on a fiancé visa, which is an immigrant visa. You come to the United States because you're going to marry somebody. And you got a 90-day fiancé visa on the, let's see, the 80th day of your stay, Typhoon Mawar hits. Obviously, all your wedding plans, etc., everything is off the map. So you go and apply for, you know, to extend your stay for another 2 months. Probably going to be granted. That's how it works. If you are a citizen of one of the FSM states, they'll give you a passport. You get to the immigration inspector at the airport, show him that passport, and he'll give you this. Welcome to the United States. And away you go. And you're a habitual resident as long as you want to be a habitual resident, unless you commit a crime that's, you know, a felony. One of the punishments of which is incarceration. And if that's the case and it's a deportable crime, when you finish your incarceration, you'll be escorted from the pokey to the airport and you'll be sent home. Now, arguably, you could read the compact law that says that people from the FSM, from the islands can come here to go to school for medical or for work, and say if they're not working, if all they're doing is laying under a nunu tree drinking beer and you catch them, they could be sent home. Well, that's part of the statute. It's not going to be enforced by immigration, by the INS folks. It can't be enforced by any territorial official. Now, maybe we could call on the Texas Rangers. Because Texas seems to have a different view of the interplay between state responsibilities and national responsibilities when it comes to border, immigration, et cetera. Now, I'm not going to expound on this today, but a state does have the ability and the authority to repel an invasion. It can't use that authority to wade across the Rio Grande or to take a platoon of tanks across the Rio Grande and start shooting up Mexico. But it does have the ability to repel an invasion. Now, of course, we're not quite sure what an invasion is. We don't know if that's the theory that Texas is operating under. One of these days I'll pick that up. But suffice it to say, going back here to the compacts, that Jim is barking up the wrong tree on this one. Going on with the article, Governor Leon Guerrero and Mayor's Council President Jesse Alec, also known as Smart. What's his name, Jose?
That Alec, that Smart Alec.
That Smart Alec said this provision seems to help make sure FAS migrants do not become wards of the state. So they need to have either a job or at least going to school while on Guam. Smart Alec shared an example of one FAS migrant from Chuk. Not a very good example. It's kind of a post hoc ergo propter hoc analysis. You know what happened? You want to know why my car's so dirty? I washed my car at 10 o'clock, and I knew it just as soon as I put the stuff away. I knew it. 10:30, it started raining, and it splashed mud all over my car. This because of this, right? And that's kind of Smart wasn't so smart with his example, but the Daily News ran with it anyhow. Joe Alec went on to say, adding that many migrants are homeless, which causes issues throughout the island. While these are unfortunate occurrences that need to be addressed, the proposed solution in Moylan's bill needs reconsideration. Without this provision, Interior seems supportive of Guam's intent to seek continued federal assistance for the costs incurred in hosting FAS migrants. So this is a real editorial, believe it or not. Once in a while, the Daily News gets it right. Hang on just a second, Jose. And they start out, Guam officials need to do more than just testifying before a congressional subcommittee to get the continued federal reimbursement for at least a portion of the costs of hosting migrants from island nations with compacts of free association with the United States. So that's the lead. That's the question. That's the issue. They fill out the issue, even with a little bit of law, and then they wind up the issue referring you back to the issue with their call to action.
An editorial so well that our host has to pull extra ink into his pen. A deserving mark on the op-ed.
So this was a real editorial. It made a point. It had a good call to action. It's right on point. It fits into the show. Good going, Pacific Daily News. And there it is, another blue star for the Daily News. Congratulations, Daily News. Okay. I got to mark up my card here a little bit to show the credit for that one. If I can find my card.
Yikes! Are those expensive credit card bills arriving? Well, we can help. Bank Pacific has launched our New Year's Resolution Solution personal loan with annual percentage rates as low as 7.49%. Money to pay off your credit cards or for whatever you want, starting at 7.49% APR. Apply in person or online at bankpacific.com and come join us. We're still celebrating. Equal credit opportunity lender. Conditions apply. Happy New Year.
Hafa-day. Alex Dimapon here from Security Title. Title reports, escrow forms, signatures, statements, and title insurance. When it comes to buying, selling, or refinancing your property, we do it all for you. At Security Title, we enjoy watching your dreams come true and being the ones to make sure it happens just as you planned. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so let's take a peek at the card. It's got a big blue star on it, but I can still read it, Jose. So here's what we've got. We start out with systemic racism, of course, and then the obligatory section dealing with Monica Flores and her love for Palestinian terrorists. And then we pick up where we left off yesterday with Troy versus the CLTC. We had a lot of calls yesterday. Seems to be a lot of interest in that. So I'm going to go to that next. And then, given all the interest in what's going on in that piece of dirt known as Israel, next item on the card is going to be Catholics versus Jews. And don't say, oh, Bob, is Bob anti-Semitic? Bob is not anti-Semitic. Then we go from there to Parade of Champions, which is not it's not somebody versus somebody else. It's about a real champion, somebody who is a champion from the get-go. Then we've got Michelle versus Trump. See if you can guess which Michelle I'm talking about. And then we've got Jay Areola versus Doug. And then we're going to come back to Pencil Neck again today. Pencil Neck versus the U.S. Constitution. Then we've got McNinch versus the legislature. Boy, McNinch has been hitting the legislature hard lately. Of course, if you're a boxer and you go into the ring and the other boxer's got what's called a glass jaw, yeah, what do you expect, right?
They're going down.
Yeah. And then we've got Jay. We got that. Then we've got Tello versus GBB, and this is a really interesting one. Tello versus GVB. And then an outfit called Will versus the UW Law School, the University of Wisconsin Law School. Sad to say, even the University of Wisconsin Law School has gone woke.
Are they located in Madison?
Yeah, I suppose they can't help it, right?
They shouldn't help it.
Yeah, they're not the University of Wisconsin, believe it or not, is not located in Wisconsin. It's located in Madison. The People's Republic of Madison.
It's like inoculate myself before I go there.
And then we've got Ishioka versus Ponzi. Okay, so starting out with systemic racism, which is, of course, brought to you by Jeff's Pirates Cove. Let's have a picture of Jeff, Jose. Yeah, there he is. There's Jeff standing next to me. Big as life, twice as ugly. Jeff's the guy in the tailgater shirt. We swapped T-shirts that day. He's standing next to the bar at Pirates Cove. A truly great restaurant, bar, museum, beachside resort, nice big covered pavilion where you can have your graduation or christening party, bookstore, gift shop, photo ops, you name it. It's a wonderful place. I was there last weekend, really had a great time. And I'll be going out there on Saturdays an awful lot because I just can't get enough of Jeff's Pirates Cove. If you've never been there before, do yourself a real favor and give it a try. I'll tell you what, you're going to really like Jeff's Pirates Cove. Okay, so systemic racism is sponsored by Jeff, and I think you kind of know how it works. This dish, this culinary delight, is served at almost any gathering of more than 3 people here on the island, right? And everybody has called it red rice ever since. But as you can see, it ain't red, it's orange. And Paul Zerzan, a correspondent gadfly, Paul's always into something, right? And he's a very smart guy, and he doesn't get into things unless there's a good reason for him to do it. So he wrote a letter to the editor and said, hey, you guys, 21st century, it's time we got caught up with the times. That rice that we refer to as red is really orange. So let's call it what it really is. Boy, the Daily News came back a few days later and lashed out at him.
How dare you?
He said, leave our rice alone. Cecile Chargalov's quote was posted, a heavy dose of xenophobia and ethnocentrism, and really smacked Paul Zerzan for having the temerity to write a letter to the Daily News urging the Daily News to tell the truth and to report facts, not just a narrative. And that's what happens. And we run into this every day here on the show, where we have a narrative that's contrary to the truth and the facts, but the narrative seems to overpower it so often. Every time I see it, I highlight it, and quite often I'll say another example of systemic racism. And if you hadn't figured it out, now you know why I use that analogy. It's a situation where the truth and the facts are subordinate to somebody's analogy, the analogy almost always being that of the left, often the wokester left. Okay, let's go back to Troy versus the CLT. Wait a minute, I got to go to talk about the facts versus the truth. Next, I go to Monica Flores, the Westpac distributor of systemic racism. If you want to buy, a barrel of systemic racism, find Monica at one of the Protege La Texan rallies, and she'll have a whole barrel of it right there. And Monica talks in terms of genocide. And here's something that ran in the National Review. Pretty good website. And it comes from the editors, and it's retitled, "The Morally Bankrupt Genocide Case Against Israel." I'll repeat, "The Morally Bankrupt Genocide Case Against Israel." Here's how it goes. It's tempting to laugh off South Africa's charges before the International Court of Justice that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians as patently absurd, because the charges are just that. And it's easy to dismiss the importance of any adverse ruling by observing that the Israelis will ignore it, because they will. But unfortunately, a swift ruling against Israel could be damaging to the mission of destroying Hamas. To be clear, the International Court of Justice was created as a part of the United Nations to resolve disputes among different countries, does not have any mechanism in place to enforce any ruling against Israel or against anybody else, but it's very popular with the separati here on Guam because they really like trips to New York to testify before staying in really nice hotels, nice part of town, rubbing elbows with the international monocular. What could be better than that?
Having explained where Guam is.
Exactly. Also, the threshold to prove genocide against a sovereign state is high. It's not just about inflicting casualties on civilians in a time of war, but proving an intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. And of course, truth be told, that's Hamas. You reminded of this on more than one time, Jose. Can you explain again?
It's part of their forming documents, as their main mission is to exterminate Judaism and all Jews, not just in the region, in the world.
Okay, so it's more than just inflicting casualties on civilians in time of war. You got to show the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, which involves compiling a significant body of evidence. Thus, any final ruling by the ICJ on the merits of South Africa's claim is expected to take years to resolve. What South Africa is seeking, however, is an initial ruling of plausibility, which requires much lower threshold of convincing judges that it's theoretically possible that Israel is committing genocide. Such a ruling could be delivered in a matter of weeks or even days. A finding of plausibility from a panel that includes judges from Hezbollah-dominated Lebanon, as well as authoritarian China and Russia, should carry no moral force in a sane world. Nonetheless, it would be cited as proof of genocide by those hostile to Israel around the world. Let's take a break, Jose.
Yikes! Are those expensive credit card bills arriving? Well, we can help. Bank Pacific has launched our New Year's Resolution Solution personal loan with annual percentage rates as low as 7.49%. Ready to pay off your credit cards or for whatever you want, starting at 7.49% APR. Apply in person or online at bankpacific.com and come join us. We're still celebrating. Equal credit opportunity lender. Conditions apply. Happy New Year.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so we got about 10 minutes to the halftime show, and I'm proud to announce that Hope Cristobal is back. Just when you thought it was safe to turn on Facebook right after the big halftime show, the horror show continues. Okay, so in order to show genocide, you got you have a really heavy-duty proof burden that you must shoulder, and you got to show some intent. Now, here's how South Africa is doing it. To indicate intent, South Africa's complaint relies on bellicose statements from various Israeli officials. Bellicose, warlike statements. The statements either lack context, which, boy, do we know that's important. If you can't add context to what you say, don't even think about going to Harvard. And just to not lose sight of the obvious point that South Africa glosses over, Israelis were reacting in response to attacks that involved slaughtering 1,200 Israelis, ranging from infants to senior citizens, gang-raping women, and taking hundreds of hostages. Yet South Africa claims it was dehumanizing. Oh, my goodness. For Prime Minister Netanyahu to state, in response to the October 7 attacks, that the war was a struggle between the children of light and children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle. Once again, that's the truth. And Maneka and South Africa have got a good handle on the agenda. And to state that we're facing monsters who murdered children in front of their parents. This is a battle not only of Israel against these barbarians, it's a battle of civilization against barbarism. The supposed smoking gun involves talking literally, a biblical reference Netanyahu made to the destruction of Amalek, which had persecuted ancient Jews. In practice, Israel has shown incredible restraint in fighting against an enemy that by design operates out of civilian areas, including residential homes, schools, and hospitals, in hopes of increasing the death toll of its own people, with the aim of putting more international pressure on Israel to stop its counteroffensive. Israel has delivered warnings to civilians before targeting certain areas. Secured corridors to assist civilians seeking to evacuate, and created non-combat zones. All of these movements and more sacrificed military ops and ultimately poor Israelis at risk in the name of minimizing to the best extent possible the civilian toll. Slapping Israel with a genocide label, even through a provisional ruling of plausibility, would handicap not just Israel, but the efforts of any sovereign country to respond to asymmetric actors who are willing to hide behind civilians. Ultimately, by providing an incentive for terrorists to use civilians as shields, the ruling would put more innocent people in harm's way. Okay, so that's, that's the facts. That's the truth. And let me see if I can find Maneka's immortal words here. Yeah. And then we have Maneka. Maneka spoke to the Post on the lawn of the legislature where she and her cohorts from Protei Latexan were waving Palestinian flags and holding up placards in favor of the Palestinian terrorists and anti-Israel. Flores likened the atrocities in Palestine to what the Chamorro people have gone through. The thing is, we are a colonized people in the Marianas and in the Pacific, and we know very well what it's like to be imprisoned, to be forcefully removed from our lands, to be forced to march, to lose our language, to lose our land to eminent domain for so-called national security, and for us to watch it happening, for the whole world to watch it happening in Palestine right now, and watch how the United States government and other Western governments are basically supporting that horrible ethnic cleansing. We are here to demand more of our leaders. Our leaders cannot take that position, and they need to rise up for the Palestinian people. The narrative versus the truth and the facts. Systemic racism, brought to you by, on the card by Jeff Pirates Cove, by the narrative by none other than Maneka Flores and Protei Latexan and the separatist movement.
You know, you're reading from great excerpts from this National Review article. There was one paragraph, I don't remember if you mentioned it, but I thought this was important to note also. The case against Israel from South Africa is incredibly weak and dishonest because it relies on civilian casualty figures from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry, and that's a part of the UN report. And the UN report even has a disclaimer. The UN has so far not been able to produce independent, comprehensive, and verified casualty figures. But they printed it in anyways.
Yeah, I read an article dealing with WAPO this morning. And WAPO just started out that way and ran with it all the way to the end. Every shade of meaning went to the terrorists, their numbers, etc. You know, the fact that the Israelis deliberately hit a hospital with bombs.
Is this a phenomenon with people actually relying on such weak and grossly negligent facts, or is this just really successful propaganda?
I don't know. I don't know if there's what the depth of the mens rea is, or the criminal intent that they have. But, you know, one of the things that's used to justify a story that's wrong on the facts is, it's kind of like when, you remember when Levin found a case that talked in terms of void ab initio, that a statute that is unconstitutional at the time it became a statute is void ab initio, and he stopped looking. I went on the internet literally for 90 seconds, and I came up with the Indiana Law Review that said it is void ab initio, but through some kind of magic, when the constitutional impediment is removed, then the statute springs back into life. Now, if I could find it that quickly, and Levin didn't cite it, and if it's out there, he needed to cite it, and if it's no longer the law, if there's a good argument against it, he needs to cite that. But he can't just not do anything.
So it's not exhausting resources, it's stopping when it fits your narrative.
And here's how you explain it. The facts were too good for me to go any farther. All right, let's break for the big show. We'll come back to hope.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Showtime in New Hampshire. I'm Sue Guzman, Fox News, and the nation's first primary underway in New Hampshire, with one candidate starting off strong. Fox's Mark Meredith with the latest from Dixville Notch, New Hampshire.
The voting is officially over here in the first of the primary contest. All 6 ballots now being pulled out of the ballot box. They're going to put it on this whiteboard as the number comes in. It is official. Wow. All 6 of the votes that were cast being for Nikki Haley. I see for Donald Trump they've put a 0, indication that the former president got none of the votes up here in Dixville Notch. And I guess that makes it about as official as it could possibly get.
More about Tuesday's first in the nation primary from Fox's Tanya J. Powers.
Former ambassador and GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley is still trying to close the gap with former President Trump in New Hampshire, where voters will cast ballots in the first of the nation primary. I talked to some of the people who attended her primary eve rally in Salem and asked them what issues are driving them to the polls for her.
It's the whole abortion issue, and it's not that I believe in abortion, because I don't, but I don't think the government has the right to tell a woman what to do with their body.
My number one thing would be her fiscal conservatism.
I mean, well, one of the ones actually that's most controversial that I do somewhat agree with is the Social Security, pushing back the age of that.
With the Nikki Haley campaign campaign in Salem, New Hampshire. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
President Biden may face a rocky start to the 2024 primary season in New Hampshire. Fox's Kevin Cork.
It is increasingly likely tonight that the White House will not like the headlines out of New Hampshire on Wednesday, especially on the Democratic side of the voting ledger, because the sitting president is in effect sitting this one out. Oh, sure, there'll be signs aplenty urging Democrats to do him a solid, writing his name in. But that may not help.
America's listening to Fox News.
Yikes! Are those expensive credit card bills arriving? Well, we can help. Bank Pacific has launched our New Year's Resolution Solution personal loan with annual percentage rates as low as 7.49%. Ready to pay off your credit cards or for whatever you want, starting at 7.49% APR. Apply in person or online at bankpacific.com and come join us. We're still celebrating. Equal credit opportunity lender. Conditions apply. Happy New Year.
The following is a public notice lane closure announcement for the Ukudu pipeline replacement on Route 16 between Reventax and Marine Corps Drive, Route 1. The lane closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024 as a 24-hour continuous operation. The project, a 198-megawatt combined cycle power plant. Again, the closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024. For more information, please contact 671-649-0001. Thank you for your patience as we move forward for Guam.
The U.S. and its allies strike back with another response to Houthi-led attacks in the Red Sea.
American and British warships and warplanes carried out multiple strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen, the second time since January 11th. F-18 fighter jets from the USS Eisenhower and Tomahawk cruise missiles struck multiple targets at 8 Houthi locations, including Al Dalameh Air Base and missile launch sites and underground facilities where the Iranian proxy stores its ballistic missiles and drones being fired at Red Sea shipping lanes.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. The search is on for 2 escapees from an Arkansas prison who are considered armed and dangerous.
The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office said it discovered Monday morning that the 2 prisoners escaped in the last 2 days from the Dub Brassel Adult Detention Center in Pine Bluff, southeast of Little Rock. 23-year-old Jatonia Bryant was being detained on probable cause for capital murder in connection with a 2023 shooting. The sheriff's office identified the second suspect as 22-year-old Noah Rausch. He's a murder suspect being held on residential burglary and theft of property charges. The sheriff's office hasn't said how the prisoners escaped. I'm Deborah Valentine, Fox News.
Suspect in the killings of 8 people in 3 locations in Joliet, Illinois, is dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound following confrontation with law enforcement officials. Police reporting on Facebook that 23-year-old Romeo Nance was located by U.S. Marshals near Natalia, Texas, at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Then after the confrontation, he shot himself. Police still trying to determine a motive. And former President Donald Trump will soon take the witness stand in his defamation trial over his comments about E. Jean Carroll, the writer who claims he sexually assaulted her back in the 1990s. The juror's illness forced a last-minute delay on Monday. I'm Sue Gussman. This is Fox News.
The following is a public notice lane closure announcement for the Ukudu pipeline replacement on Route 16 between Reventax and Marine Corps Drive, Route 1. The lane closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024 as a 24-hour continuous operation. The project, a 198-megawatt combined cycle power plant. Again, the closure will take place starting in January till the end of June 2024. For more information, please contact 671-649-0001. Thank you for your patience as we move forward for Guam.
Hafaday, Alex Demapon here from Security Title. Title reports, escrow forms, signatures, statements, and title insurance. When it comes to buying, selling, or refinancing your property, we do it all for you. At Security Title, we enjoy watching your dreams come true and being the ones to make sure it happens just as you planned. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Hi, this is Jerry Roberts.
What's happening in the workplace? What about your job and career? What ideas will find their way into your world? That's what you get with The Extra Point every day on The Ray Gibson Show here on 93.3 FM. Sometimes it's about what's in the news, or working relationships, or how to get further and do better. I try to make it interesting, inspiring, and hopefully sneak a little fun in too. Be a part of it. 7:25 weekday mornings. The Extra Point, brought to you by First Hawaiian Bank.
So here we are, second half of Tall Tales, and as per my earlier promise, that is if gremlins don't get into our equipment again, are we ready to go, Jose?
Yes, sir.
Roll it.
Colonizer! You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization. You're the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are.
We need to just do different. We need to do better.
Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest and what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw how singing through the panel. Di taw-taw-tano how. Waho bini taw-taw-tano. Waho bini madahoga. Waho restaurant na kay kitsu bini. Hago tata restaurant mo bini. What's on you na? You need to leave.
You need to go. Please. You need to get out of here.
Please, sponsor.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not
When you get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, sponsor. Please. No, you cannot confront.
What happened to him?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic, systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. Hi, Mama.
We're proud of you, Auntie. So there you go. We run this every Monday. We've had some technical difficulties. We're back on the air again. We'll be running it every Monday from now on. I think it's important for people to have a glimpse of what the leaders of the separati movement on the island look like. The folks who would like Guam to be an independent country, separate from the United States of America. Imagine what our country would be like if she were in a leadership position. She's in a leadership position right now. She's a chairperson of the Chamorro Language Commission. You would expect someone with a title like that to be a little bit more appropriate in public. That was an extremely inappropriate performance that she put on. I wonder how she's able to talk with her teeth so tightly clenched, but I'm not a dentist, so I'll just leave that alone. But that's Hope Cristobal, one of the prime movers of the separati movement.
And how very concerning. Another example of taking something out of context and then going with it, not knowing what you're yelling for. It just took that speaker to say, "You're not wanted here, Paul Zerzan, go away." And then the rest of the crowd starts chanting that same phrase.
Yeah, you need to
no
go.
clue what's happening.
Yeah.
They just know that that person at the microphone is spewing something.
Exactly. Pure democracy. Yeah,
Crazy.
the mob is the purest
Scary.
form of democracy. Well, the Hope Cristobal show is a really nice prelude to Troy's column on his website or in his publication called Candid News. I read it all yesterday. I'm just going to give you the high points today. But it's racist laws that screwed over the Chamorro people. Now, that's an interesting way to put it. Now, these are racist laws that screwed over the Chamorro people. So I suspect the Hope Cristobal of the island are saying, God, there are so many that the United States did to us. How could we possibly count them all? It's not what Troy's talking about. He's talking about racist laws that came out of our own legislature, which I think would be fair to label a Chamorro legislature that screwed over the Chamorro people. And he says, and let me pick up some of the high points here. At the turn of the legislature, the turn of the last century, the legislature came up with a Chamorro-only registry with a vague threshold that would trigger a Chamorro-only vote on the so-called decolonization of the island from its administering sovereign, the United States. According to the law, those who are Chamorro and registered in this plebiscite could choose to advocate an official position for independence from the U.S., statehood, or a third option called free association, also as independence, but were a desire for a relationship via treaty with the United States. The Chamorro-only registry definitely is a policy that favors one race over all others. The most effective argument, and that's not saying much for this prejudice, has been this: Guam is the land of the Chamorro, and so the Chamorro must always have a governing heritage. We were here first, except that neither the Chamorro Land Trust nor the Chamorro-only decolonization effort has resulted in any advantage for the vast majority of Chamorro people. In fact, the Chamorro Land Trust Act has essentially tied up tens of thousands of acres of undeveloped land while providing a few hundred families with lives of squalor and poor sanitation. And the Chamorro-only vote has never happened, despite millions in public dollars being spent on GovGuam employees who have been paid to have the colonization vote since antes guantes. And the only people who have ever benefited from the decolonization effort are the loudmouths who got to go to publicly paid trips to New York and the Caribbean and all other exotic places where the UN allowed them to speak for 10 minutes before everyone back to forgetting Guam exists. Yep, leave it to Guam. Probably the only Pacific in the world system in the world that can't even get racism right. Yeah. And then he talks about, racial discrimination against, he references back racism against the current crop of Chukis, people living on the island, and back before that it was Filipinos, etc. And then he winds up with this punchline: the legislature needs to trash both the decolonization effort and the Chamorro Land Trust Act. As for all the public land, sell it for dirt cheap on the open market and watch the economy flourish. Then finally, Chamorros can actually benefit from public policy, and so will everyone else. What's wrong with that? So that was the column, and I left out some parts of it, but basically what Troy is saying is the Chamorro Land Trust Act is racist because it reserved, as it was enacted, it reserved leaseholds for people who could prove up Chamorro ancestry. Now, we heard R. James yesterday. R. James was born in the Northern Marianas, has some Chamorro ancestry, but does not meet the blood quantum tests. Therefore cannot take fee simple title to realty in the Northern Marianas.
You know what? I didn't know there was a blood. I thought it was a hereditary, like as long as one of your parents were from the CNMI. But
no, it's blood quantum.
That's harsh.
Yeah, and they've changed it. They've liberalized it, but it's still blood quantum. Yeah, it's more complicated than just being born there. And so R. James says he's not going to rent for the rest of his life because he can't own a house in Saipan. So he brought his company down here and moved down here where free alienability of real property is the norm. We didn't even get into restrictive covenants here. So that is clearly racist. There's just no getting around it. The Northern Marianas, now here with our racism, with our Chamorro requirement for Chamorro land trust property, we go by the old Jim Crow rule, the one drop rule that said if you have back before we woke up civil rights wise, if you had one drop of Negro blood, then you weren't white, you were black. And the infamous Plessy case, Plessy versus Ferguson, that held that a Louisiana statute requiring segregation in railroad cars passes the constitutional muster. Mr. Plessy had one black great-grandfather, which made him a Negro. Although he didn't look like a Negro. And this is kind of the fallacy behind this whole thing. So that was R. James' take on racism. Now, the United States Justice Department blew the whistle on the Chamorro Land Trust Act, said, you guys, you can't do that. You can't racially segregate leases on real property. You can't put a sign in the window of your boarding house that says Negroes need not apply, or whites only, or Chamorros only. You can't do that. So they entered into I think a kind of a hokey settlement. And the settlement says that in order to be an eligible applicant, having signed up in 1995 and proven your Chamorro-ness doesn't do it anymore. Now you have to be able to show that you ranched, cropped, or owned realty that was taken by the United States government in eminent domain before 1968. Then you can become an eligible applicant. Doesn't matter if you're Filipino, Chamorro, whatever. But of course, the Land Trust Commission has really kept that quiet, because they know that when those 1995 people become fully aware of it, they're going to be coming to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission meetings with pitchforks and torches, because the Chamorro Land Trust Commission had to sign off on that settlement.
So that initial list is now
It's nothing.
gone.
It's nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. Except that, nobody wants to say that except guess who, right?
Yours truly.
But it's clearly racist. And as was the Chamorro registry for the so-called plebiscite. Now, free association is BS. I've gone through it too many times. It is not a choice. There really are only three choices. Choice number one, stay where we are, unincorporated territory of the United States. Choice number two, incorporated territory of the United States. 3, independence. Well, actually 4. Statehood is legal. I mean, the law would allow Guam to be a state. Practically, an island as small as this with 154,000 people, no chance of it ever becoming a state.
That's where it's not impossible, but highly improbable.
Absolutely improbable. The United States does have the ability to make Guam independent. And once again, I turn to my favorite book called The United States Constitution and turn to Article 4, Section 3, which reads, Article 4, Section 3, Paragraph 2, the Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. Territory or other property. Now, there's no S on that word. It's territory, not territories. Territory or other property, meaning a territory is property. And that's exactly what Downs versus Bidwell said. That the island of Guam is property of the United States, but not part of the United States. It's not an integral part of the United States. Therefore, the revenue clauses of the U.S. Constitution were not applicable on the island of Guam, and it follows that the United States Constitution did not apply to Guam ex proprio vigere, meaning of its own force. So we were an exclave of the Constitution, and that's why we have all of these wonderful devices and benefits that we have that aren't available in the States. But anyhow, those are the options that are available to us. Now, the separati wanted to have this vote to choose amongst the three. They don't include unincorporated territory of the United States, and I think I know why. Because I think they know that's what most people want. They're very happy with the situation we've got now. So they wanted only Chamorros to vote. Now, if you want to find out how Chamorros feel, think, react, reason about something, then you don't ask anybody but Chamorros. But if you're going to use a state actor to develop that information, then you do have the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which applies by reason of the Mink Amendment to the Organic Act. You have the Voting Rights Act and other things that says you can't do that. Now, there's nothing to stop a private organization from doing its own vote. Now, the Democrat Party does it every year. They take over the polling places from the Election Commission, and they hold their party elections. And I've never heard of, they've never had anybody, they've never Bidened anybody, as far as I know, stolen the election from somebody. So you could do that if you really want to find out and if you do it right, and you dot your I's and cross your T's, you'll have something that you can take on the road and sell. But, of course, that would take the fun out of it. They want this government that was created by a federal statute to do the heavy lifting for them at the same time that they're constantly criticizing, calling the Organic Act a dirty document, criticizing the colonizer and the whole thing. All of that stuff goes, except, can you do this plebiscite for us, folks? Yeah. So there's plenty of hypocrisy to go around here. And Troy lays it out. It says neither of these things did anything at all for the people who the separati claim they want to help, which is the Chamorro people. And so often it happens like that the benefactor of these grand government schemes gets hurt worse than anybody else. Our Carl waxed eloquent about how creating the welfare state was extremely injurious to the people it was designed to help. It took fathers out of the homes, created fatherless homes, where the emphasis for the fatherless households was to have as many children as possible. And I can't say that I disagree with our Carl.
There's this is just an on the surface kind of observation about the Chamorro Decolonization Committee, made up of academia. And then we look at how some of academia, professors and stuff, who hold a thesis probably wrote a paper with something in it, and then along comes other mindsets, but they won't let go of their thesis. And they keep on. And the professors are supposed to be there, and I'm not picking on just professors, this is just an example. They're supposed to be there for students. They're supposed to be growing minds and uplifting intelligence and facts and stuff like that. But that mission is put to the side because of this grasp of their thesis, and they can't let go of it. And the same thing with decolonization. They can't let go of what was initially started, and even though it's been found out to be flawed, they don't want to let go of it. Right now, Troy is right. There is no purpose for this commission right now, because there can be no Chamorro-only plebiscite. It cannot be run by the government, and the Decolonization Commission hinges on having a Chamorro-only plebiscite. We need a courageous legislature to have an oversight to get rid of this committee.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've remarked on exactly what you said, Jose, and my take was this. Unless the Decolonization Commission provides us with their vision of what an independent Guam would look like, then they need to close shop, because they serve absolutely no purpose except putting money in Melvin Wonpat's pocket.
And in order for them to do that, they'd have to let go of independence, and they can't.
Yeah. Yeah, they would. Okay, so that's Troy's column. We got a lot of calls yesterday. I was hoping that people would want to talk about it a little bit more today. We're going to go to Wrigley, and then I'm going to come back with Greg M. again. As per
Yikes! Are those expensive credit card bills arriving? Well, we can help. Bank Pacific has launched our New Year's Resolution Solution personal loan with annual percentage rates as low as 7.49%. Ready to pay off your credit cards or for whatever you want, starting at 7.49% APR. Apply in person or online at bankpacific.com and come join us. We're still celebrating. Equal credit opportunity lender. Conditions apply. Happy New Year.
Celebrating New Year's 2024, Whopper Wednesday is back. Every Wednesday in January, visit participating Burger King restaurants and say, I love the Whopper. And get a free flame-grilled Whopper sandwich with the purchase of any large-size Whopper combo meal. Top off your meal with french fries, onion rings, or halvesies, and a refreshing Coca-Cola. Tell your family and friends and enjoy your Whopper Wednesday only in January. Available at BK Hagutnya, Micronesia Mall, and the airport. Happy New Year, Guam, from your friends at Burger King. You rule.
so here we are. So at the end of the column that ran in Candid News, somebody named Greg M. chimed in, and this is what he said. I respectfully disagree. Would I be able to go to FSM, RMI, or Palau and ask the government to give me some land? Or better yet, if I could even purchase land? I guess you know the answer to that. Does that make them racist as well? Okay, well, let's pick up and reason like Jerome M. does. Now, if they do it in the 3 islands south of us, can it possibly be racist, Jose?
You know, as pure as I want to think of it, yes.
Yeah, but if they do it, then it must be okay to be racist, right?
I heard something here.
Wrong. But this would appear to be what Greg M. is telling us, that they do it there, a little quid pro quo, right? We could consult with the mayor of Malesu, one Ernest Chatgaloff, who would tell us the rule of geese. What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. So if they do it in the island nations south of us, and we decide that's not racist, then we're an island. Shouldn't we be able to do the same thing and not be called racist?
Okay, I'm following this logic. If enough people do racist acts, then the racist act becomes non-racial.
Exactly, yeah. So during the Jim Crow era in the United States, the Plessy versus era in the United States, enough people did it, so it couldn't have been racist, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Greg M., your logic is not logical. And let me start out again with the word racist. Now, I have a couple of principles that I throw out as things that are always true in every situation, under every set of facts. I don't go with this whole relativist thing, well, yeah, it's racist, but it depends on where and when and who the race, Yeah, I don't go with that. And I've said this on the show before, racism is always bad. No matter how noble the purpose, no matter how well-intended the sponsors of racism, it will always lead to bad results over in the short run and in the long haul. So yes, those 3 island nations have racist policies because one race has privileges and immunities and rights and entitlements that all the other races are not eligible for. And the basis for these rights, privileges, immunities, and entitlements is not accomplishment. Somebody who goes out and invents something, goes out and starts a push cart on the streets of Manhattan and turns it into Amazon worldwide and is one of the richest people in the world. Yeah, he's got privileges, et cetera, that the rest of us don't have because he earned it. Yeah, and that's how it works in a free capitalist society. Not because, and those who trumpet the racial superiority, and I've heard people of every different race spout it off. I'll just pick on the white race, and I've heard people say, well, you put a so-and-so in charge, what do you expect? Unless you got a white guy running that place, it ain't going to work. And the question that I ask is, well, you're white, right? Yeah. How hard did you have to work to do that? Well, what do you mean? How hard? Well, I didn't have to work at all. In other words, the fact that you are white, not something that you earned, not anything that you accomplished. It's, I guess if I would have to characterize it, it would be an accident of birth. You're born that way. It's not an achievement to be the member of this race or that race, or not to be a member of this race or that race. It kind of goes back to what's called natural law. And there's no room in that for racial discrimination. But Greg M. figures that if it's okay for the 3 island nations, he wants to know, does that make them racist as well? And the answer is yes. Now, here's what happens when people run into a talisman like the word racist. You know, this is not something you can brag about. Being a racist is not something that you buy a little badge and you draw the obligatory cartoon showing the different colors of folks with the European traffic sign, and then underneath it, I'm a racist. You don't do that. As if you are a racist, you don't get bragging rights about it. You try to soft pedal it as much as you can. And you don't want to be identified with racism, because even racists know that racism is bad. So then what do you do when you're in a situation where you have to vote for the Chamorro Land Trust Act and the Chamorro Registry, which by any account are racist? What do you do? Well, what you do, this is called cognitive dissonance, of course. Going back to who was it, Fitzgerald yesterday? Yeah. Able to bear two opposite thoughts and still function. Remember that? Part of the show. Anyhow, what you do is you try to use a relativistic definition on the part that you don't like. And you say, well, I'm not a racist, but the Chamorro Land Trust, it's not racism because the aim of it was that no matter what, there should always be Chamorros who own land on Guam. And the only way that we could accomplish that, not sell the land, because if a Chamorro could buy it, he could sell it. And it's important. And see, this is not racism. This is preserving the land. It takes a lot of mental gymnastics to go through that. And as with the Chamorro Registry, yeah, I'd really like to know myself. I would like to see a really accurate polling of every Chamorro person on the island, applying the one-drop rule. An election, just like the Democrats do, get 90% turnout. I would really like to know that. But don't do it with my money. Don't do it with tax funds. Don't use a state actor to do it, especially a state actor that you loathe so much because it's the colonizer's government that's doing it. But that's the way you get around this racist thing. You have to have a relativistic definition of what you're doing, and you don't explain it in terms of racism. You have some other great policy goal that you're trying to satisfy. Well, it's really important to know how indigenous people feel about this.
And what's interesting, and this is not just because we talk about it all the time on Tall Tales, it's directly connected to that mindset of abortion, being pro-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say that you're helping women's rights and protecting their bodily choice at the same time not protecting a body's choice and terminating their lives to do so. They're contradictory to each other. They don't make sense, and no matter how many euphemisms you throw at it or whataboutisms you throw at it, it still is what it is. The intentional termination of a life, the intentional discrimination based on race, no matter how you do it.
Let me give you an example from attorney Vanessa Williams. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. The defense of impossibility, competing interests. This is not about terminating a life, Jose. And that's it. And that's how this cognitive, in other words, if you scrape the paint and varnish off of it, what you have to be able to do is lie to yourself. Right?
Exactly.
You have to be able to lie to yourself. And in our society, we place a very low value on lying. You know, George Washington did violence to that cherry tree, but when his old man put him on his proofs, they didn't even need to read George's Miranda rights. He fessed up right out, right from the get-go. Father, I cannot tell a lie. I did it. So going on with what Greg M. says, he says, as I see it, the intent of the Chamorro Land Trust was to set aside land for our people who are landless. See what I mean? Greg M. is lying to himself. First of all, the Chamorro Land Trust Act repealed the old Land for the Landless Act. So that certainly wasn't, so he's wrong on his facts. And even if that's the case, so we only do this on a racist basis. If you're landless and you're not Chamorro, go out and get a paper route, get a side gig, make enough money to buy some land for yourself. If you're Chamorro, then we'll give it to you. And we'll set aside government land to do it. And he says, what's wrong with that? Everything is wrong with it, Greg M. And then he tells Troy, take off the rose-colored glasses, my friend. Yeah. Well, I think Greg M. has some glasses. Now, you know how glasses bend to light, according to the prescription of the glasses, and that's how they're able to correct your vision. So the rays that are coming to your eyes are not correct, so the glass, he's the guy that needs to get his glasses corrected because the prisms in his glasses distort everything that he sees or everything that he, and it's not what he sees, it's what he doesn't see, Jose. He doesn't see that he's lying to himself to defend what can not be identified as anything other than racism. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs and we'll come back to Catholics versus Jews.
Yikes! Are those expensive credit card bills arriving? Well, we can help. Bank Pacific has launched our New Year's Resolution Solution personal loan with annual percentage rates as low as 7.49%. Ready to pay off your credit card or for whatever you want, starting at 7.49% APR. Apply in person or online at bankpacific.com and come join us. We're still celebrating. Equal credit opportunity lender. Conditions apply. Happy New Year.
Hoffaday, Alex Dimapon here from Security Title. Title reports, escrow forms, signatures, statements, and title insurance. When it comes to buying, selling, or refinancing your property, we do it all for you. At Security Title, we enjoy watching your dreams come true and being the ones to make sure it happens just as you planned. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
So here we go, fans. We're at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. I got to do 6 furlongs more, and I'll cross the finish line and wrap it up for another delightful Tuesday. Next on the card is Catholics versus Jews. And this ran at PJ Media, a good conservative website. And it's by a guy named Greg Burns, and the title is Self-Service Checkout Being Cashiered? One of the great consumer arts is to select the right line to stand in at checkout. What consumer doesn't weigh the merits of the old lady with 8 items versus the efficient-looking young mother with 30 items? I do, because the old lady with 8 items, you know, lugs her stuff up, puts it on the counter, gets her purse out, digs around in her purse for at least 5 minutes, and then comes up with that old-fashioned coin purse that you snap open the top, right? And her bill is $9.53. She digs in there, or 9 hours and 43 cents. She digs in there for the quarter, the dime, the nickel, and the 3 cents. And this takes her about as long as it took me to pick up my groceries, right? So that's on the one hand, or the efficient-looking young mother with 30 items, you know, who pays with a credit card, does it all the time, really knows how to sling the groceries around. Which of these will go into price check or coupon debate mode? Now, the young mother's probably going to go into the coupon debate mode, right? Which will put you in a holding pattern as you watch the other lines breeze by. With paper-thin margins, retailers thought they hit pay dirt with self-checkout, which hasn't reached Guam yet, has it, Jose? I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, yeah.
Has it?
It's in Home Depot.
Uh-huh.
It's in Mighty Payless. And you have base access, right?
No.
Oh, no. Up in Anderson, I think they got rid of at the base exchange of the PX, every register except for one. That's manned by cashier. All the rest are self-check.
Yeah, I forgot about Home Depot. You're right. Yeah. So they thought they'd hit pay dirt. Cut wages, shorten lines, make shopping, that is spending money, easier. But instead of improving the bottom line, stores are losing money. One study shows that retailers who rely heavily on technology have double the industry loss rate. Shrinkage is the technical term for this loss, and it can mean the difference between solvency, survival, and store closings. As one study notes, there appears to be an uneasy relationship between customer convenience and the wider criminogenic impacts of self-checkout. Criminogenic. How's that for a word? This reduces effort and risk for offenders, increases potential rewards, while at the same time providing ready-made excuses for offending behavior. Most critically, where self-scan systems are available, rates of shrinkage increase dramatically. Whether rates of shrinkage are generated by genuine error or malicious intent is unclear, though such systems encourage otherwise law-abiding citizens to engage in crime, then the social implications could be profound. Well, we know in all of the George Soros cities, shoplifting is encouraged. Unless it's $975 in California, they won't even call the cops. It seems the average theft is $120, with an estimated 10% of scammer scanners accounting for 67% of these losses. Apparently, there are 3 ways to rob a store. Number one, a gun. 2, go to a big city, fill up your arms with stuff, and just walk out. And number 3, chisel a store out of products at self-checkout. While most customers are too timid for 1 and 2, legions seem perfectly at home scamming the checkout scanner. In the wrestling match of technology versus human nature, fallen human nature has technology pinned to the canvas, and retailers are now crying uncle. Now, that's kind of sexist, isn't it? Shouldn't half of them be calling auntie and half calling uncle? Among the issues of theft on purpose, theft by accident, and the necessity of paying overseers to oversized consumers who seem incapable of working cash registers for free, the dream of a profit bonanza has turned into a cascade of losses. An insult to injury, stores are paying top dollar for equipment to facilitate the theft. Profiling their clients, Walmart is now removing self-checkout from stores in certain locations. Racist, Jose.
Well, let's ask Greg.
Mm-hmm. Greg will tell us, yeah. Well, if Walmart, no, if they can do it in the Southern Islands, why can't Walmart do it? Would that be racist too? Target is reducing the number of items that can be scanned, and Dollar General is looking to add staff. In stores you frequent, you may have noticed more full-time self-checkout employees there to help you navigate. And some stores are adding more in-your-face camera surveillance systems as a deterrent. A friend who was a district attorney in one of the lowest crime counties in the country told me once how growing up near a large park in the Bronx, he got a summer job working for, are you ready for this? A Jewish man who ran the concessions. The guy's working at an amusement park, and he got a job working for a Jewish man who ran the concessions. The owner told my friend to bring as many classmates as possible from his Catholic grammar school for jobs. He showed up with his Jewish friend. The owner was upset. He pulled me aside and said, "I'll give your friend a job, but I told you I wanted kids from Catholic school." Listen, all the kids who work for me steal candy. But Catholic school kids go to confession, and the priest makes them pay me back. Okay.
So someone knows.
So there you go. Yeah. All that long story just to get up to that punchline.
I was wondering where we're going.
Uh-huh. Well, that's the beauty of tall tales.
Right.
You know, I know where we're going. You oftentimes figure it out, but it's always a really interesting destination.
But do you have the courage to remain on the ride?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tailgaters have the courage to remain on the ride. Okay, next on the ride, we're going for a ride on the parade this time, Jose. If I don't have time to finish it, I'll pick it up tomorrow. It's almost time to say goodbye to our president. And this ran on KOAM News. Cops suspended in destruction of evidence investigation. One of the Guam police officers under investigation was forced to turn over his badge and gun. The officer was investigated internally by the department on allegations he destroyed evidence, got suspended from duty. Now that means he doesn't get paid. You get suspended for 2 weeks, you don't get paid. The officer is now under criminal investigation. Here we go again, Jose. Officer Christopher Champion is suspended from duty.
Is there only one officer in the Guam Police Department? Because that's the only name I ever hear.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I call this Parade of Champions. Now, to refresh your recollection, you've heard that name before. Jerry Kitchen. I'll come back to that. Officer Christopher Champion is suspended from duty after allegations served last December that he destroyed evidence while responding to a call in Tumum. Earlier this month, Police Chief Stephen Ignacio confirmed the internal affairs investigation against Champion, but he didn't identify him. He didn't even tell us that he was a champion. KOM, an officer who allegedly found a meth pipe and baggie of meth, but rather than confiscating that item, he tossed it into the jungle. Event played out there before the evidence was discovered, and this officer was investigated. Are you aware of this incident? Police Chief Stephen Ignacio. Yes, I was aware of that incident. Now, he leaves out the important part. He was aware of the incident, but he doesn't get into timing. Was he aware of it from the get-go? That case is actively being investigated. I do know we conducted analysis of the alleged contraband that was thrown, and it was not a controlled substance. It was not a meth pipe either, and sources confirmed. Sources confirmed, however, that the field test was performed and the items he test did come back presumptive positive for meth. So is the chief lying to KUAM? Or did he just not know? Or has he signed up for the Greg M. School of truth-telling?
Is he Catholic, and will we not know till he goes to confession?
That's true. Champion now forced to turn in his badge and gun during his 2-week suspension from the force. In a follow-up interview this week, Chief Ignacio declined comment on the results of the IA investigation. We cannot comment on any adverse action, if any, he stated, and asked if due to the fact that the adverse action was saved, would he say this would warrant a criminal investigation? The chief replied, I've been in discussion with the Attorney General's office regarding any criminal investigation, and they acknowledged and they are looking into it, and they're going to, if they're going to pursue anything. Attorney General Doug Moylan confirms with KOAM News the case is currently under investigation. With that investigation to determine if criminal charges could be handed down against the officer. It's unclear if Officer Champion will fight his adverse action before the Civil Service Commission. I would ask this, based on what's in this article, how could it not be criminal conduct? Destruction of evidence is a crime. And it's a crime in spades for a cop to do it. Now, this guy's got quite a track record going, doesn't he? He never saw a controlled substance that he couldn't hide. Is it that time already, Jose?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Judgment Day in New Hampshire. I'm Ted Lindner, Fox News. The New Hampshire primary happening today. The first votes cast just after midnight. 6 registered voters in the town of Dixville Notch voting with all 6 ballots cast for Nikki Haley over former President Donald Trump. The GOP field narrowing this past weekend as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race. Fox's Tanya J. Powers taking a look at the Nikki Haley campaign.
Former ambassador and GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley is still trying to close the gap with former President Trump in New Hampshire, where voters will cast ballots in the first-to-the-nation primary. I talked to some of the people who attended her primary eve rally in Salem and asked them what issues are driving them to the polls for her.
It's the whole abortion issue, and it's not that I believe in abortion, because I don't, but I don't think the government has the right to tell a woman what to do with their body.
My number one thing would be her fiscal conservatism.
I mean, well, one of the ones actually that's most controversial that I do somewhat agree with is the Social Security, pushing back the age of that.
With the Nikki Haley campaign in Salem, New Hampshire, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Former President Trump, who's leading in the polls in New Hampshire, rallying in Laconia on the eve of the primary Monday night, commending his former rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who announced he was dropping out this past weekend.
He fought hard and he fought well, and now we have one left. We started off with, really, if you add some Democrats into it, we started off with 13, and now we're down to 2 people. And I think one person will be gone probably tomorrow. and the other one will be gone in November.
And Fox News Audio will be providing special coverage of the New Hampshire primary beginning at 6:06 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Go to foxnewsradio.com to listen and find out more. America's listening to Fox News.
New from the Fox News Podcast Network.
I'm Emily Campagno, and this is the Fox True Crime Podcast.
And I had nothing to do with her disappearance.
I sit down with the people who lived the nightmares.
I was in shock. I was just devastated.
The investigators who tirelessly worked on the case.
And I really hope that they can catch this guy.
Bringing you closer to the story than you ever thought possible.
Listen and follow now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
These are the stories that keep you up at night.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts commercial-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Dana Perino, Kennedy, Ben Domenech, The Duffys, and many more. Subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
The Supreme Court will allow the Biden administration to resume cutting razor wire barriers along the U.S. southern border. Fox's Kristen Goodwin with more.
In a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court grants the Justice Department's emergency appeal to allow Border Patrol to continue removing a razor wire fence on the border of Eagle Pass, Texas, and Mexico. Texas National Guard troops installing the roughly 30 miles of fencing to deter migrant crossings. A federal judge ordering it to be taken down. Then a federal appeals court granted Texas's request for a preliminary injunction. In court documents appealing the decision, the Biden administration argued the wire prevents Border Patrol from reaching migrants as they cross the Rio Grande. Adding federal immigration law trumps Texas's efforts to stop the flow of migrants entering the country. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
And the U.S. and the United Kingdom conducting a second round of bombing runs on sites used by Iranian-supported Houthis. Fox's Gernal Scott with more details.
The joint airstrikes targeted sites with missile launching capabilities in Yemen Monday. The operation was carried out via the sea with warships and submarines and from jet fighters, aiming their weapons not only at launchers, but at storage sites to deplete the Houthis' arsenal. Less than 2 weeks earlier, the Americans and the British launched the first wave of bombings, taking out more than 60 targets in 28 areas, designed to stop the Houthis' drone assaults on commercial vessels in the months since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
We'll see if the good news on Wall Street continues today as the markets rose again to build on its all-time high reached last week on